The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
After 9 months of testimony, it took less than 4 hours to decide the case against O.J. Simpson. How did the jury reach a verdict so fast? I'm Michael Ayala. This is Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win?
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
When I heard the first not guilty verdict, I actually kind of went numb. All of you defense monsters made sure that this SOB was going to walk out of a courtroom.
My mom just sat there and she goes, okay, girls, we need to go home and get the kids because he's a free man.
I feel that race is the only explanation for the anger that exists today.
From a standpoint of race, it was introduced by this witness Furman. This stuff about playing a race card is preposterous.
I didn't watch it. My wife did. She called to me and she goes, it's not guilty and they're going to blame all this on you.
I went back to work. Certain people who I felt we were friendly stopped talking to me.
The last thing anybody thought about was 2 young people getting slaughtered in West LA in the middle of the night. It just seemed to be forgotten entirely.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, I see we're all in fairly good spirits so far. I have brought you in today to advise you that I have granted the party's motion for a full sequestration of the jury in this case. I don't see so many smiles at this point.
My name is Lionel Cryer. I was juror number 6 during the O.J. Simpson criminal murder trial.
The body of Nicole Brown Simpson, ex-wife of O.J. Simpson, was found after midnight in the sidewalk outside her West Los Angeles home. Next to it, the body of an unidentified man.
Initially, when the first report came, they're talking about a murder that had occurred over in West Hollywood, and that apparently it was possibly the wife of O.J. Simpson, but Mr. Simpson was out of town at the time of the murders. And I'm going, well, thank God he wasn't there when it happened.
Within 3 months of the murders of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, jury selection was underway. More than 600 potential jurors were brought in for questioning.
We will be looking for jurors that can be fair and impartial and that are intelligent enough to understand what may be some very complicated evidence.
The company that I worked for paid you for your entire jury service while you were there. So I couldn't make finances as a hardship for me. I was a single guy at the time, so I didn't have a family or anything to go home to.
The jury had to fill out 75-page questionnaire, answer lots of really personal questions, and then were individually questioned by the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, and the judge.
The fact of the matter is everyone on the jury or everyone in that room probably had some kind of notion as to what had happened already.
Did you?
Of course, sure.
What was that notion?
I was willing to give Mr. Simpson the benefit of the doubt.
We just want to get people who, in their hearts, can look us in the eye and say, I want to be fair, I can be fair, I can spend this time in this search for truth, and I'll do that.
The final jury that was seated, there were 12 jurors and 12 alternates. It was a mostly minority jury, mostly African American, and mostly female.
This case had one element that we've never seen in any other case. In this case, the jury was sequestered for 9 months. So those jurors spent as much time behind bars as O.J. Simpson did for all intents and purposes.
We will try to make this something less than an experience of, for example, going into incarceration. But it won't be a picnic.
That decision was the biggest blunder of the whole thing from day one, was deciding to sequester a jury throughout the length of the trial.
The jurors were housed at the Hotel Intercontinental in downtown Los Angeles, where they spent 265 nights. Juror number 6, Lon Cryer, kept a personal journal documenting his experience.
We will begin here with my first journal entry, which is actually dated January 15th, 1995. And I'm saying here today is my 4th day of sequestration, when we were directed by the court to meet at a vacant lot near Dodger Stadium to be transported to our new digs for possibly up to 6 months, more or less. When I first got in that room, I just knew that there were bugs and monitors in my room. So I remember I tore my bed apart. I went and tore all behind the television, all the armoire. I went looking for bugs and cameras.
Sure, Lon Cryer was concerned that there could be cameras in his hotel room, but perhaps he was most aware of the camera that was inside of the courtroom, because he knew the whole world was watching.
Although the cameras can't photograph us, we're aware of the cameras in the courtroom. And also, as you're sitting there, you glance over, everybody's constantly staring at you.
We just glued our eyes to them, and what are they taking notes about? And we're always trying to read, what were they interested in? Who did they like? Trying to read their facial expressions.
During the defense opening statement, Judge Lancey jury box to show the jurors the scar on his left middle finger. Murders.
When he came over to show us the finger, I can recall him walking down the line from juror number 1, because I'm at number 6. As he got closer to where I was referring to me at that point, he stood right there in front of me for a long time and just held it out for me to look at. I was bothered because I'm like, why is he targeting me? And then I started thinking, does he think I'm a positive juror for his case?
9 months of sequestration was tough for these jurors. Think about it. They had to be supervised at all contact with the outside world. So even something as simple as taking a walk could become stressful because they had to be watched the whole time.
They would give us this little small area that you could walk in. And eventually I think I would get out of the view of the deputy. Oh my God, she pranced down on me and talked to me like I had made a big, major incident that I was creating and all. And I just felt so small about the way that she was speaking to me at the time. And so, yeah, I was very intimidated by how I was being treated.
Straight ahead, on Trial and Error, the closing arguments.
I think it's been hard for all of us to be here and to listen to all of the evidence. In this case, evidence that proves Mr. Simpson is guilty, because none of us wanted to believe it. And it's really kind of hard to have to believe that the man we saw in the movies and the commercials could do this. But he did.
It's not so because they say so. That's just rhetoric. We, this afternoon, are talking about the facts. So it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Ms. Clark, on behalf of the people, are the prosecution prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor, we are.
All right, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Finally. I feel like it's been forever since I've talked to you. It kind of has. It's very weird to be in this courtroom next to you, seeing you every day, not getting a chance to talk to you. It's just very unnatural.
After 36 weeks of testimony, which included the implosion of Detective Mark Furman, the spectacle of the glove demonstration, and a relentless defense attack on the crime scene investigation, both sides delivered their closing arguments in a last attempt to sway the jury.
The brutal and callous way in which Ron and Nicole were murdered may understandably make you feel sorrow, pity, even anger. It would be wrong to find the defendant guilty just because you felt sorry for them. On the other hand, although it would be completely understandable if you were to feel angry and disgusted with Mark Fuhrman, as we all are, still it would be wrong to find the defendant not guilty just because of that anger and disgust.
Marcia Clark has a very serious problem during closing arguments. She has to acknowledge that Mark Fuhrman is a racist. She also has to convince the jury that the blood was not planted. But there were other serious mistakes that the police department made along the way. To acknowledge all of that and still get the jury to believe in the state is an extremely tall order.
In this trial, just like every trial, some evidence has been presented to you that really is not relevant to answer the core question of who murdered Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown. And it's up to you, the jury, to weed out the distractions, weed out the sideshows, and determine what evidence is it that really helps me answer this question.
The jury, they did not seem warm toward Marcia Clark, but they tried to, I think they tried to hide their feelings, but it definitely came through.
I wanted to give the whole situation the benefit of the doubt. And so I tried to not have any preconceived ideas about one way or the other about whether he was guilty or innocent.
I think it's been hard for all of us to be here and to listen to all of the evidence. In this case, evidence that proves Mr. Simpson is guilty because none of us wanted to believe it. We all wanted to believe that our image of him was right. And we all know that we never knew him exactly, but we kind of felt like we did. And it's really kind of hard to have to believe that the man we saw in the movies and the commercials could do this. But he did.
You're a criminal defense attorney and you have a tough case. This is what you do. You argue the law. And if the law is against you, you argue the facts. And if the facts are against you, you raise hell and blame somebody else. When the facts and the law are against it, blame the police, blame the prosecution, point the finger elsewhere, create a smoke screen. And that's what they've done in this case, ladies and gentlemen. Smoke and mirrors.
The prosecution makes this great claim, and then the next thing you know, the defense comes around and picks apart exactly what their contention was earlier. And so it was like you go back and forth as far as for how you would take it every day.
Judge Ito, my colleagues on the defense, my colleagues in the prosecution, Goldman family, the Brown family, to the Simpson family. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Johnny Cochran was an extraordinary lawyer and an extraordinary performer. He knew how to really present and make an argument, and he knew how to appeal to the jury.
This is O.J. Simpson's one day in court. By your decision, you control his very life in your hands. Treat it carefully, treat it fairly. Be fair. Don't be part of this continuing cover-up. Do the right thing, remembering that if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. That if these messengers have lied to you, you can't trust their message. That this has been a search for truth.
Without a doubt, F. Lee Bailey and Johnny Cochran were the leaders of this defense team. But Barry Scheck put on such a performance with the DNA evidence in the blood that he became elevated. So much so that they put him up in closing arguments with Johnny Cochran.
So much of the essential facts in this case are just shot through with reasonable doubt. There is something wrong. There's something terribly wrong about this evidence. Somebody manufactured evidence in this case. There's missing blood. There's EDTA. There's questions, serious, deeply troubling questions. You must distrust it. You have to distrust it.
Barry Scheck was extraordinary. No doubt about that. But at the end of the day, it was Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran was the one who was able to pull it all together and present it, hand it to that jury.
One of the things that has made this country so great is people's willingness to stand up and say, that's wrong. I'm not going to be part of it. not going to be part of the cover-up. That's what I'm asking you to do. Stop this cover-up. Stop this cover-up. If you don't stop it, then who? You think the police department is going to stop it? You think the DA's office is going to stop it? Do you think we can stop it by ourselves? It has to be stopped by you.
It seemed pretty obvious that the jury was impressed by Johnny Cochran. I mean, they definitely sat up a little straighter and leaned in a little bit more when he was talking, especially during his closing argument, which was really riveting, and they seemed really riveted by.
I was thinking last night about this case and their theory and how it didn't make any sense and how it didn't fit and how something is wrong. It occurred to me how they were going to come here and stand up here and tell you how O.J. Simpson was going to disguise himself. Was going to put on a knit cap and some dark clothes, and he was going to get in his white Bronco and this recognizable person and go over and kill his wife. That's what they want you to believe. That's how silly their argument is. And I said to myself, maybe I can demonstrate this graphically. Let me show you something. This is a knit cap. I'm going to put this knit cap on. And you've been seeing me for a year. If I put this knit cap on, who am I? I'm still Johnny Cochran with a knit cap. And if you look at O.J. Simpson over there, and he has a rather large head, O.J. Simpson in a knit cap from 2 blocks away is still O.J. Simpson. It's no disguise. It's no disguise. It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Still ahead on Trial and Error.
When the 10-2 vote came in, I got up and I kind of did a, like, oh my God, we're almost out of here. I said, I can't believe we're this close to getting out of here.
And later,
I remember thinking, did I actually hear that? Did I actually hear that? And then I heard Kim Goldman behind me and to my right, and that's when I realized, and it really hit me, they walked him. The jury's walked Simpson.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
When the jury finally got the case against O.J. Simpson and began to deliberate, it was clear from that initial vote that it wouldn't be long before they reached a verdict.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I have just a few final instructions that I need to give to you before you start your deliberations on this matter.
The jury went out after closing arguments. I think it was a Friday. They had the instructions read to them. They went out, they went away for the weekend, and then they were going to come back on Monday and start their deliberations.
The night before deliberations, I already had a preconceived idea in my head which way I was going to lean anyway, which was going to be not guilty, and it was only going to be based off of, I think there was reasonable doubt presented in the case.
Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but should do so only after discussing the evidence and the instructions with the other jurors.
I'm sitting there thinking to myself, but what if I'm the only person that sees it this way? Because again, I had no idea what my fellow jurors thought about the case. We could be here for days, for months in this deliberation process. Because again, if I'm the lone guy holding out for not guilty, then will I be able to sustain all the arrows that are going to be slung at me at that point in time?
On Monday, October 2nd, 1995, the jurors began their deliberations at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Someone says, let's take a straw vote first, just to see where people's minds were at. And so it could have been within the first 15, 20 minutes of the time we walked in there, I would say. The vote that came back was 10-2. When the 10-2 vote came in, I got up and I kind of did a, like, oh my God, we're almost out of here. I said, I can't believe we're this close to getting out of here. And that was my initial feeling. But also I'm saying to myself, okay, we gotta do this right though, because this is way too quick, I says. And I says, I gotta stay with the mandate here. We gotta deliberate in earnest and do our job. But yes, I was excited.
This trial lasted 37 weeks. Many people thought this jury was going to be out for a long time just because of the sheer amount of evidence they had to go through.
I made it a point to be the person that stood up in the room and I says, hey, look, This is a very serious situation we're in here. Now is the time for anyone with a differing opinion to start voicing your opinions. And there was silence in the room. No one spoke up for themselves. These people were too beat down to even try to fight for their own conviction of how they really felt about, why they voted the way that they did. And I think they start realizing, oh, well, we're this close to leaving, I guess. Forget it.
During deliberations in the initial vote, 2 of the jurors voted for guilty. But when they were given a chance to explain why, neither one of these 2 jurors said a word. 90 minutes later and a second vote, it's 12-0, not guilty.
Because we came back 12-0 so fast, I think somebody decided, maybe we need to look at some other testimony in order to try to legitimize that we're sitting here deliberating in earnest. Maybe we should have the limo driver's testimony reread to us.
The jury had been at it just a short while when there was a request for readback from Alan Park, the limousine driver.
You see that white Bronco in this photograph, sir?
Yes.
Was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by at about 10:22?
I didn't see it.
There was a lot of speculation, trying to understand what the timeline is.
Madam Court Reporter, would you please commence?
Direct examination by Ms. Clark. Question. Good morning, Mr. Park. Answer. Good morning. Question.
I took the readback of Alan Park's testimony to be a positive. Up to that point in time, in looking at the jury, I could not read their faces. They were very stone-faced as far as I could tell. I didn't know which way they were leaning.
In my mind, I'm thinking, why? We already came back 12-0. Why are we doing this? But, of course, I'm just sitting there, and I'm letting these people do what they want to do with it.
After about an hour of reading back Alan Park's testimony, Judge Ito decides to take a 10-minute break. It was at that point the jury sent him a note and said, we don't need to hear any more of the testimony. And then they sent him another note saying, send us the verdict forms.
There was very few people in court because everyone just thought they were going to ask for some testimony to be read back. And they literally, the court reporter sits there and reads it back. And then the jury announced, to everyone's shock, that they had a verdict.
O.J. Simpson looked stressed out is the best way I can describe it. He was looking at the jurors. I did not, however, see any of them make eye contact with him.
This is probably the one thing to happen that virtually no one expected.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we were taking our brief recess, Mrs. Robertson advised me that you buzzed 3 times and indicated that after receiving the verdict forms that you have reached a verdict in this case. Is that correct, Madam Foreman?
Yes.
All right.
Everybody expected a long deliberation after such a long trial. And so many of the attorneys were gone. Johnny Cochran, I think, was in San Francisco. I don't believe Marcia Clark was there. Families weren't there. Most of the lawyers weren't there.
I indicated to the attorneys that I would give them a reasonable opportunity to be here for the announcement of the verdict. And I've indicated to them that I will accept the verdict from you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That'll give you the opportunity to pack up and take care of those things over back home, as you've called it. And so we will stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
You've been instructed by the judge to deliberate. You got 9 months of testimony, right? 4 hours, 4.5 hours, you come back and say, we got a verdict. By the way, an hour and a half of the 4.5 hours was for lunch.
I would have preferred that we sat and deliberated in earnest back and forth with each other, especially people that had altering views. And so I was very disappointed when it didn't happen that way. I mean, I was overly joyed that I was leaving, that it was going to mean that, but I also knew that if we were going to have repercussions behind the fact that we did this so quickly.
Up next on Trial and Error.
They first read Nicole's verdict, and in my head, it's, well, I haven't read Ron's yet. Almost thinking that there could be a different verdict for both.
And later, the fallout for Lon Cryer of the not guilty verdict.
When I went back to work, certain people who I felt we were friendly stopped talking to me.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
trial today, we have absolutely no indication that anything is going to go awry, whether it's an innocent verdict or a guilty verdict. The message that we're sending is that this department, under this leadership, is prepared to do whatever is necessary.
I got there really early, and there were hundreds of police officers on horseback. There were hundreds of people on the streets. It was so tense.
Please do not cross the street. That's why there was a police line there.
The morning of the verdict, I remember we had a caravan of people driving to the courthouse, and going along the 101 freeway, there was an overpass that someone had taken a huge white sheet and wrote "The Goldmans, we love you," and threw it over the side of the bridge. That was pretty awesome.
What was it like going in on verdict day?
It was difficult because there was a piece of you that wanted the right thing to happen, always the right thing to happen, but it was a piece that kept poking at your brain saying, maybe not.
It was anticipatory, where we were waiting for it to happen, but to get there, it was like, God, just, what is it? Yes or no? Guilty, not guilty? What is this?
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask that you carefully listen to the verdicts as they are being read, as after the verdicts have been read, you will be asked if these are your verdicts.
You're always nervous at verdict time, no matter how strong you think the case may be.
We believed that it was a not guilty verdict. The sheriff's department, which took control of OJ at the jail, were also with the jurors. They said to OJ, pack your stuff up. And the jury was back so quickly. I mean, we just couldn't imagine that in this case that 12 people could reach a verdict of guilty in that short period of time.
Sitting right in front of me, Sean Chapman and Carl Douglas, and Sean was crying. As the jury came in, one of the jurors, juror number 6, Lionel Cryer, looked at Carl and just almost imperceptibly closed his eyes and nodded. And Carl didn't even look at Sean, just said kind of out of the side of his mouth, "Stop crying, we won." And I thought, oh my God, it's an acquittal.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
You could hear the people in the streets reacting from inside the courtroom. You could hear cheers, the noise of the people in the streets as the verdict was being read.
I didn't scream. I wasn't emotional. I just wanted to get out. And I just remember sitting there just like this and asking the bailiff, and she goes, "I can't let you go." And I just wanted to run and be free of all of it.
They first read Nicole's verdict, and in my head, it's, well, I haven't read Ron's yet. Almost thinking that there could be a different verdict for both.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Ronald Lyle Goldman, a human being, as charged in...
When I heard the not guilty verdict, I was actually kind of went numb. And then I heard Kim Goldman behind me and to my right, and she was sobbing, just this heartbreaking anguish sob, and that's when I realized, and it really hit me, they walked him.
Somewhere deep inside me, I had to have believed that it was guilty because my reaction was shocking. I had to have believed somewhere that they were going to come back with a guilty verdict, but I don't think I walked in there feeling confident.
Juror number 11, as to count 2, is this your verdict?
I didn't watch it. My wife did. She called to me and she goes, it's not guilty and they're going to blame all this on you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? So say you won, so say you all.
We had to watch all the defense cheering and slapping, glad-handing everybody. And all of you defense monsters made sure that this SOB is going to walk out of a courtroom.
My mom just sat there and she goes, okay, girls, we need to go home and get the kids because he's a free man. We were kind of like in this, peculiar situation where it's very bittersweet. Like you want justice, but kind of you don't because you've got these two kids and this is their dad. And no matter what, blood is thicker than water.
Juror number 6, as to count 1, is this your verdict?
Yes. I was at Harvard and I watched it with a group of students. And as soon as the verdict was announced, many African-American students cheered and were very, very happy.
At Howard University in Washington, D.C., the historically black school, there was joy. Sheer, unmitigated joy.
The racial division was so great that people saw the facts differently. They saw things through the prism of race.
I took in the reaction to the verdicts much like everyone else in the public did. I was surprised, and part of my surprise had to do with the fact that I felt we were much closer as a society than apparently we were.
Juror number 1 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2 is to count 2. Is this your verdict?
OJ was visibly relieved, kind of, nodded at the jury and almost like thanked them. And Johnny Cochran was hugging him and patting him on the back. Robert Kardashian, however, looked almost like stunned in disbelief.
I know, and I feel like I should defend my dearly departed friend Robert Kardashian, who always regretted and lamented the way he looked in that footage because he looked like he was totally shocked. He wasn't shocked. He can't explain why he looked that way, but he really hated that it appeared to be something that it wasn't.
So would you be seated, please? Just have it quiet in the courtroom, please.
I remember feeling very quickly that I needed to go to the gravesite and tell my brother, and I think I felt that we had let him down in some way. I think I felt responsible, which I know is irrational. I don't think that there are adequate words to describe what that feeling feels like.
All right, the defendant having been acquitted of both charges, he is ordered transported to an appropriate sheriff's facility and released forthwith. All right, we'll stand in recess.
The jury was discharged. They went out the back of the courtroom. We had juror number 6 make sure we were all aware of how he felt with this Black Power salute.
And I put the fist up is to say, try and enjoy your life and do something practical with yourself. Because I felt like he had been given a gift with this acquittal.
Up next on Trial and Error.
This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served.
The repercussions of O.J. Simpson's not guilty verdict.
That Monday afterwards, I'm sitting there having lunch, and some guy comes up to me and goes, "How dare you? You are just a really low-life piece of..."
The Court TV podcast will return.
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second.
I left the courtroom and I first went to a press conference that the DA had and the prosecutors had. You just really saw like their shock and their anger and their disbelief at this verdict.
This prosecution team didn't lose today. I deeply believe that this country lost today. Justice was not served.
Everyone here has put in 110%, given their all for everyone, for justice, for the families of the victims, in the effort to see that the lives of Ron and Nicole were not thrown away.
We came here in search of justice. You will have to be the judges, I expect, as to whether or not any of us found it today. But I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. But I'd also like to thank the lawyers on our prosecution team. I am honored to have.
Comes as a great disappointment, and for Ron and Nicole, we'll never forget you, ever. Thank you. I think the Simpson case, in many, many respects, provides us as trial lawyers, as law enforcement officers, judges, and the general public with a lot of lessons, and hopefully, systemically, that we do things better.
First, I want to thank God for this verdict. He always directs our paths, and he's worthy to be praised. And at the outset, Jason Simpson will read a statement from Mr. Simpson and from the family.
I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. My first obligation is to my young children, who will be raised the way that Nicole and I had always planned. When things have settled a bit, I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow. I can only hope that someday people will come to understand and believe that I would not, could not, and did not kill anyone.
I feel that race is the only explanation for the anger that exists today. I mean, when people find out I was part of the OJ defense team today, they want to get into it with me. There's real visceral feeling about it today. I can't think of any other reason why.
This stuff about playing a race card is preposterous. It would malpractice if a man has racist views in a case and a lawyer doesn't pursue that. They introduced Furman, and then we dealt with it. But we choose to call it the credibility card.
So this is what I will be remembered for. So be it. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't apologize for being a good detective that day. I won't lower myself to grovel about if I'm a racist or I'm not.
Regarding the race issue, I'm going to speak about that at greater length when I get my thoughts together, but there has been a difference of opinion with many of the lawyers. I said from the beginning that race was not an issue in this case and should not be an issue. I still feel the same way. However, credibility was always an important issue in this case.
Robert Shapiro ended up speaking with Barbara Walters afterwards, and he drops a bombshell in this interview. He says that not only did the defense team play the race card, but that they dealt it from the bottom of the deck.
What was it like for you when you walked out of that jury room after that trial?
Oh, man, my life was totally topsy-turvy. When I went back to work, certain people who I felt we were friendly stopped talking to me. Wouldn't have anything to do with me anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to caution you at this time that there is, as you know, intense media interest in this case.
I did start getting some death threats verbally. I think there was some things left at my door, at my apartment, and which scared me because that's telling me now, oh my God, everyone knows where I live.
Whether you wish to cooperate with the news media is, of course, entirely up to you. However, I must warn you to expect the worst as far as that is concerned.
So that Monday afterwards, I'm sitting there having lunch, and some guy comes up to me and goes, "How dare you? You are just a really low-life piece of and all of this," and he was just disparaging me. What it indicated to me is the magnitude of how badly the verdict was received by people.
So your life really was never the same after that?
No, not at all.
I think about Ron every day. I think about what he could be doing, what we could be sharing with him, that our life would be totally different because he would be part of it. It's there every day. You can't get rid of it. It's not something you want to get rid of, but it's there. It's going to be there till the day I die.
The grief and loss that someone feels when someone is taken from them, there's the confusion, there's the denial, the disbelief, the shock, the anger, the what ifs, the yearning that doesn't go away.
I would much rather have my sister in my life than do these interviews, believe me. But I can't bring her back. So let's use her face and her name and Ron's experience and his name and his face to raise awareness of crime and domestic violence.
This is not justice. This is a sham. And again, I'm thinking, gosh, what could have been? What if? What if this was only 6 months and there was no cameras? What if there was no Furman? What if there was no Rodney King? The last thing anybody thought about was 2 young people getting slaughtered in West LA in the middle of the night on a walkway. That just seemed to be forgotten entirely.
While Simpson was acquitted of the double murders, he was found liable in a wrongful death civil suit brought by the victims' families. O.J. Simpson died of prostate cancer in 2024. No one else has ever been charged for the deaths of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. Thanks for watching. I'm Michael Ayala.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.